Hello, campus. Welcome to January's Sting. Today, we're going to focus on high leverage practices, especially the area of student feedback. So I'm excited to spend a few minutes with you today. Today, our learning target is I can incorporate the high leverage practice of feedback into my classroom to increase engagement and rigor. Today, what we're going to do is we're just going to look through a little bit of research from different people and talk about that briefly and expand on those ideas before we send you on your way. Susan Brookhart, she first wrote, the first one that I want to share with you is that students need to know their learning target, the specific skill they're supposed to learn, or else feedback is just someone telling them what to do. Now, I put this first because y'all are doing a great job with your learning target. When we go into classrooms, it's clear what students are learning, what they're expected to know. There's success criteria that says, hey, this is what great work looks like. Y'all are using rubrics. And so feedback is just the next step in this ongoing process of strengthening our Tier 1 instruction. Grant Wiggins wrote that feedback is not advice, praise, or evaluation. Feedback is information about how we are doing in our efforts to reach a goal. Now, this is where it gets a little bit sticky because so often we use terms that sound more like advice, and feedback has to be much more concrete. So let's look at these three examples. You need more examples in your report. You might want to use a lighter baseball bat, or in my daughter's case, softball bat. You should have included some essential questions in your unit plans. All three of these statements are more along the lines of advice. Feedback is much more concrete. So if I want a student to increase his examples in a report, then I would need to be very specific with where and how that would need to look. Students need something that they can fix right away. I know that I've heard Coach Green on the softball field say, hey, keep your head on the ball. That's a very concrete piece of feedback that softball players know that they've got to keep their head down and track the ball and not throw their head up. So students are the same way. They want very specific ways that they can increase their work. At Calhoun, we have some super high, wonderful achievers. And then we have some others who just want to know what they need to get by. Very specific feedback provides our students with information that is what meets the standard, but also what could exceed the standard. So feedback is super important for students that want to know how they need to improve. Effective feedback occurs during the learning while there is still time to act on it. So when we're talking about long projects or student essays, those during the work time is the exact time when students are really going to need to have that feedback opportunity. We don't want to give feedback after the fact. The kids don't like that. They don't learn from that. And we aren't able to fix things that are very easily undone if we're giving proper feedback throughout the process. So effective feedback, it might look like keeping a conferencing notebook. In high school, I always like to try the that's good, now this. It's kind of that positive reinforcement, that grow, so to speak, followed by that glow, so to speak, followed by that grow. We're flip-flopped that. So we want to give our students something that they're doing well, keep that up, but we also want to give them something that they're going to try. So Miss Lewis at the middle school, she's given us some suggestions on how to start keeping a conferencing notebook, and that's going to be coming around pretty soon. But I do want you to think about the fact that, y'all, we have a lot of students. Some of us have 75, 80, 85, 90, but some of us have 150 students. And I don't know about you, but my mom brain, it sometimes gets overloaded. So if we can jot down and write down, this student is doing really good at this, but they need to grow in this area, then that allows every one of our students to create a path for progress. Every student that we have has an area of need, and as teachers, we just have to continue to focus on those needs. Now, when we give a grade as part of our feedback, students routinely read only as far as the grade. And I know that this is true, but sometimes I like to give grades for projects that they're going to see routinely. So if I'm giving a Google question in Google Classroom, excuse me, then the first time I give it, my expectations might be set. I might provide some feedback to the students while they're working. I always click that little checkbox that says allow student to edit, and I always uncheck that checkbox that says allow students to respond because, well, they respond to each other in some very odd ways, but they don't always work back on checking their work. So when I give a grade for that, we know that they're going to look at the grade. Oh, 90 is not so bad. But when we talk about how did I get that 90, being clear and having clarity will really help with our student feedback. When we're looking at providing feedback, we want to try to stay away from vague phrases like "that's a great job" or "good work," or your paper is kind of weak, or you made a C on this paper. I think that you did. You know what you did. It was a C. Or I'm pleased with your work. A lot of times in middle school and high school, I'll hear teachers say, "Hey, you've just got to study harder." Well, those are more phrases that don't evoke a sense of I know what to do with the student. So when we're thinking about providing feedback to students, we want to say, "Good work," and then as this presentation says, put that colon in there and then think about an example. So give an example of ways that you could study harder. For instance, when I was in college, as you guys know, Coach Hall and I were in college together, we made a lot of flashcards. So when it became time for us to study, the way that we studied harder was those flashcards. I got this, I need this. I don't know this, I need this. So those are tools that students might not know that they need until that feedback is given. Hey, why don't you try to add a complex sentence right here or a compound sentence right here? Those are things that our students need to do in order to struggle through and grow in their work. Now, feedback is very time consuming, but I want you to know that it's super vital to student growth. So as you know, we're focusing a lot on student growth. Where were they in August versus where are they now? And in math and English, we use our map data to kind of help guide that. But along the way, we always want to know that our students are growing. And the easiest way for us to do that is through feedback. So here's a few ways that you can make time for feedback. First, I want you to focus on errors, not mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Sesame Street taught me that when I was just a mere kid. But errors are things that they are continuously doing that shows that they don't have an understanding of that standard. So a mistake would be leaving the R off of your and just putting you. I do that all the time when I'm texting. It's like a mental block. But an error would be misusing a homophone over and over and over again, not just one time. But we want to make sure that when we're in our science, our social studies classes, when we're working on math, there are factual errors, things that by law just doesn't work. It could be I solved a math problem wrong. There are procedural errors where I did the step in the wrong order. There's transformation errors where when I used it in this case, I was able to do it. But when I used it in this case, I messed it up and did something wrong. And then there's misconception errors, which is when I don't fully understand how it works properly. And so therefore I use it improperly. So when we focus on errors and not mistakes, we don't overwhelm ourselves and we don't overwhelm our students. Also, I want you to try to identify patterns in errors. So a pattern in an error would be misusing a homophone over and over and over again, or simply, forgetting what 6 times 7 is versus 6 times 8. Those are patterns, and we can group students by their needs when we identify those patterns. And that creates that number 3, global errors and targeted errors. When we're starting to notice patterns and mistake and errors, then we can start thinking globally. My whole class needs to be retaught this piece in order to be successful on the standard, or this small group, this targeted group of 5 students, I need to pull all of these together so that I can reteach this concept so that we can provide feedback to them and therefore stop the continuous error that they are making. And then number 4 is to use prompts and cues. Oftentimes, guys, our kids just don't have the language for what they know they need to say. That's why in English we always talk about reading, writing, and talking. The more we can talk through something, we enable our students to have that voice. So they might not be able to use all of the academic or domain-specific vocabulary, but if we prompt them to use that vocabulary and we see that it's coming slowly and surely, that will help us provide that feedback to the students so that they'll know, oh, this is what I was meaning to say, but this is how I was saying it, and now I can learn from that. Guys, I want you to know that you're doing a great job. I have included a short little closing video in the Bitmoji classroom. It's some of our students. I just went around and polled a few of them and said, hey, what helps you the most? And so you can look back and see what some of our high schoolers said and some of our middle schoolers said. But I want you to know, y'all are amazing. I want you to focus in February on giving feedback. If you need some help, I know the last couple of weeks I've been in lots of classrooms in the middle school, and it's a daunting task sometimes to keep up and provide that feedback. So I'll be happy to help you. Just reach out to me. Keep doing what you're doing. Keep working on growing our kids. And of course, in everything that you do, focus on the love and the relationships of our students. Hope y'all have a great day, and go Jackets.